Hi y'all, it's Miss Childress from 7-3. I'm here with you today to work through the reading we have for our Korea lesson. So the first thing I like to do before I even do anything with the document is I'm always like, okay, what are my questions? What am I actually trying to answer? So I'm actually going to go all the way down until I reach the questions like what we would do in class. And I'm going to just have this up for myself so I know what are the questions that I'm actually trying to answer. Okay? So, number one, ask us which section highlights the idea that many were dissatisfied with the meeting between Moon and Kim. Okay? All right, I can do that. Okay. Read the following statement. Kim Jong-un believes that the meeting between North and South Korea is a step in the right direction, okay, which sentence from the article provides the best support for the above statement. And then it looks like we're going to read the following passage introducing the meeting between Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in. All right, so I got to look for what is going on in that meeting between those two leaders, okay? And then last but not least, how will the meeting between Kim and Moon affect the development of nuclear weapons in the Korean Peninsula? So we got to figure out what is happening with our nuclear weapons. Okay, so now that I know what I'm listening for, or what I'm looking for in the article, I'm going to go ahead and go back to it. All right, and now I think I am ready to start the article. Okay, so summit between the two Koreas offers opportunity to help heal old scars. Okay? Goyang, South Korea. After a historic meeting, the leaders of North and South Korea said Friday, April 27th, that they would seek a nuclear-free Korean peninsula. And I'm going to highlight that because I remember I was supposed to be listening to something about nuclear weapons on the Korean peninsula. They also plan to work toward a formal end to the Korean War within the year. And that kind of sticks out to me because I'm like, wait, we just learned about the Korean War. What are they saying a formal end, right? Why is that? And another thing, before I go any farther, I also like to make sure I'm checking or I'm sourcing my reading. Okay, so all that means, right, we look at our title, but I'm going to come right here and I want to make sure I'm recognizing this is from News ELA, but it's from 2018, about this time 2 years ago. Okay, so we know 2018, they're getting together, we're trying to make an agreement, we're trying to end the Korean War. However, their summit ended with few details on how they will reach those goals. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in set aside a year that saw them seemingly on the verge of war. So that tells me, hey, 2018 was not a good year for these two leaders. They grasped hands and strode together across the cracked concrete, marking the Korea's border. And in our social studies lesson, right, we talked about the DMZ, right? What is the DMZ? What does it mean, right? What is its purpose? Meeting considered impossible just months ago. The site might have been considered impossible just months ago. Still, it will not erase their failure to provide any new measures on a nuclear standoff that has terrified millions. And what they mean by that nuclear standoff, right, is North Korea has nuclear weapons and South Korea is scared. It did, however, allow the leaders to step forward toward the possibility of cooperation. So the two Koreas getting along again. They acknowledged a difficult past and the doubts that, after decades of failed talks, things will be different this time. On the nuclear issue, the leaders repeated a previous vow to rid the Korean peninsula of nuclear weapons. And remember, that was one of our questions, I remember. It delayed one of the world's most pressing issues until a summit between Kim and US President Donald Trump in coming weeks. So they're not going to decide right away, right? They wanted to talk to Trump first. Still, The summit produced the sight of two men from nations with a history of hostility, right? Their two countries don't get along, grinning after Kim walked over the border to greet Moon. So this means the North Korean leader is going into South Korea and saying hi to the South Korean leader, which they had not done that previously. Kim became the first leader of his nation to step on Southern soil since the Korean War. Both leaders then briefly stepped together into the North and back to the South. From missile tests to a historic handshake. The summit marks a swing in relations for the countries, from nuclear threats and missile tests to signs of peace and cooperation. Right? So I can see, right? We've had a change. We went from being threatening to use our nuclear weapons to now we're kind of getting along. Perhaps the change is best illustrated by geography. Kim and Moon's historic handshake on the border occurred within walking distance of a spot with a darker history. A North Korean soldier fled south in a hail of gunfire there last year. North Korean soldiers killed 2 U.S. soldiers there in 1976. Standing next to Moon after the talks ended, Kim faced cameras, sending his image live to the world. He declared that the Koreas are linked by blood as a family. The leaders also vowed to achieve a nuclear-free Korean peninsula, something that they've said before. The latest declaration between the Koreas, Kim said, should not repeat the unfortunate history of past inter-Korean agreements that only reached the starting line and which then became derailed. So it hasn't worked in the past. Still technically in a state of war. What happened Friday should be seen in view of the last year. The United States, its ally, South Korea, and North Korea threatened and raged as the North unleashed a stream of weapons tests. So the U.S. and South Korea really do not like when North Korea is testing their nuclear weapons. It should also be seen in light of the long, destructive history of the two Koreas, which fought one of the 20th century's bloodiest conflicts. They now occupy a divided peninsula that's still technically in a state of war. Trump tweeted Friday, Korean War to end, and said the United States should be very proud of what is now taking place in Korea. Both Koreas agreed to jointly push for talks this year with the United States, and also potentially China, to officially end the Korean War. It stopped with an armistice that never ended the war. Right? So technically, they are still fighting to this day. Weak nuclear language. Many will judge the summit based on the weak nuclear language. Okay, so I'm curious, what does they mean by that? North Korea's nuclear and missile tests last year likely put it on the threshold of becoming a true nuclear power. The North claims it has already risen to that level. It has spent decades building its bombs despite heavy international criticism. South Korean politicians criticized the leader's statements. They noted it fails to get a clear commitment on nuclear disarmament. And if you think about, we talked about the arms race, this nuclear disarmament just means, right, we're getting rid of them. Okay, we don't have as many arms. Liberty Korea Party Chairman Hong Joon-pyo denounced the summit as a show camouflaged as peace. However, the Koreas made progress on other points of friction between them. Moon agreed to visit Pyongyang, North Korea's capital, sometime in autumn. Both leaders said they'd meet on a regular basis and exchange calls via a recently established hotline. And a hotline, we have one, the United States has one with Russia, and it's just an immediate phone line that will go straight to the leader of the other nation. Western Sea border named a peace area. They agreed to settle their disagreement over the Western Sea border by naming it as a peace area. Fishing activities are to be secured for both countries. And again, this is another good example of they're starting to get along, right? Where we're going to share this area. They also said they would allow temporary reunions of relatives separated by the 1950-1953 Korean War. Kim Kim acknowledged the widespread doubts over their summit. There are skeptical views on whether the meeting today will yield meaningful results, Kim said. If we maintain a firm will and proceed forward hand in hand, it will be impossible, at least, for things to get worse than they are now. So I'm going to highlight that part, right? He's saying, hey, we're at least going to get a little bit better, right? It can't get any worse than it already is. High Hopes Summit will help heal scars. Kim, during their talks, joked that he would make sure not to interrupt Moon's sleep anymore, said Moon spokesman Yoon Young-chan. It was a reference to the North's early morning missile tests last year. Kim also referred to South Korea's Yeonpyeong Island that North Korea attacked in 2010, killing 4 people. So that was 8 years ago, and you can see, right, they have a lot of bad blood. He said its residents, who have been living in fear of North Korean weapons, have high hopes the summit will help heal past scars. So these two leaders together are going to kind of start to fix things. Kim said he'd visit Seoul's presidential Blue House if invited. The historic greeting of the two leaders, which may be the images most remembered from the summit, was planned to the last detail. However, the multiple border crossings may have been unplanned. Crossing the dividing line. Before the crossings, Moon stood near the Korea's dividing line. He moved forward the moment he glimpsed Kim appearing in front of a building on the northern side. They smiled broadly and shook hands, with the border between them. Moon then invited Kim to cross into the south, and after Kim did so, Moon said, "You have crossed into the south, but when do I get to go across?" Kim replied, "Why don't we go across now?" and then grasped Moon's hand and led him into the north and back again into the south. Moon then led Kim along a red carpet into South Korean territory. 2 fifth-grade students greeted the leaders and gave Kim flowers. An honor guard stood at attention, with a military band playing traditional Korean songs beloved by both Koreas. They then took a photo inside the Peace House where the summit took place. Low expectations. Expectations were generally low on the nuclear issue. All right, so they didn't think anything was going to come of it. Past so-called breakthroughs on limiting North Korea's weapons have collapsed amid charges of cheating. Some, however, say the only way to get a deal is to do what the Koreas tried. Sit down and see what's possible. The White House said it is hopeful that talks will achieve progress toward a future of peace. Okay, so now that we've read it, you can go ahead, click back on our Google form again, and you are ready to knock out those questions. Good luck, guys.